Good evening and welcome to UC Berkeley's public hearing regarding the draft environmental impact report for the UC Berkeley 2021 Long Range Draft Development Plan and Housing Projects 1 and 2. I'm Kyle Gibson, the Director of Communications for UC Berkeley Capital Strategies. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge that UC Berkeley continues to proactively engage in planning around the COVID-19 pandemic, in collaboration with the University of California Office of the President and our public health partners. UC Berkeley is operating in accordance with all public health directives and all relevant orders regarding the public health emergency. Of direct relevance to the California Environmental Quality Act, shortly after the issuance of Governor Newsom's Safer at Home, Stay at Home order in March 2020, the governor issued an executive order, later extended, which suspended certain requirements for the filing, noticing, and posting of California Environmental Quality Act documents. Deadlines for public review and comment periods for California Environmental Quality Act documents, including draft environmental impact reports, were not suspended, and those deadlines remain unchanged. UC Berkeley is providing a 45-day public review period for the draft long range development plan environmental impact report, as required by the California Environmental Quality Act, and will continue to closely track any California Environmental Quality Act related developments that may affect our ongoing projects, including those currently undergoing environmental review. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and restrictions placed on in-person gatherings throughout the state of California, this evening UC Berkeley is hosting an online public hearing rather than an in-person event. The format for this evening's online public hearing is an informational presentation followed by a reading of public comments. The presentation will provide an overview of the proposed project and the draft environmental impact report. The presentation will highlight content and key conclusions and provide an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act. The public comments that will be read after the presentation were submitted to the university in writing in accordance with the instructions provided in the Notice of Availability issued on March 8, 2021. Each person that submitted a comment gave their expressed permission to allow the university to read their comment as part of this evening's online public hearing. All comments received by the deadline in the Notice of Availability will become part of the public record, not only the comments submitted for us to read aloud tonight. The deadline to submit comments, as stated in the Notice of Availability, is 5:00 p.m. on April 21, 2021. The public can submit comments to the university by emailing planning@berkeley.edu or by US mail to the address that will be provided in tonight's presentation. Please remember that all comments submitted by 5:00 p.m. on April 21, 2021 will become part of the public record and will be responded to formally as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to take a moment to highlight and to clarify that a public hearing, whether held in person or virtually online, is not a questions and answer session. All comments received will be collected, considered, and responded to in writing in the final environmental impact report as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. And now I would like to introduce a member of our physical and environmental planning team, Raphael, to present the overview of the proposed project, the draft environmental impact report, and an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act. Raphael?
Thank you for joining this evening. My name is Raphael Brinus. I'm a senior planner in physical environmental planning. I'm going to share my screen. I would like to acknowledge the current circumstances we are in this evening because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the university is continuing this online platform for the hearing as we did with the scoping meeting in April. Thank you for your patience and flexibility as we continue to adapt to the current health conditions. I would also like to stress that the public's participation has been and will continue to be paramount for making this project successful. UC Berkeley is the lead agency responsible for preparing the environmental review for the project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. This evening's hearing has 4 parts. 1 is to provide information on the proposed project. 2, to provide an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. 3, to explain how to review the LRDP and LRDP update EIR, and to provide public comments on these documents. And finally, 4, to read public comments that were received by 1 p.m. this afternoon. While the presentation will provide an overview of the proposed project and process, the overall purpose of tonight's hearing is to collect comments on the content of the draft Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, rather than on the merits of the project. Comments are most helpful when they focus on the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project. As Kyle mentioned, no questions will be addressed tonight. Whether you provided comments tonight or any time during the public comment period, all comments will be included in the public record and responded to and considered in the final EIR as required by CEQA. Tonight is not the only time to provide comments on the content of the draft LRDP update and the update EIR. Towards the end of this presentation, I will discuss the EIR process and schedule and explain the opportunities for public participation and input. The first part of the presentation is an overview of the project. The university's current long-range development plan, or LRDP, was approved in 2005. An update is needed to align the LRDP with the university's current priorities to meet the needs of its students and its mission as a modern 21st century public institution of higher education. I will refer in this presentation to the new LRDP as the LRDP update. The UC Regents require every UC campus to have and periodically update an LRDP. While the UC Regents determine undergraduate enrollment for each campus, the LRDP is a guide for physical campus development based on population projections. It is a framework which provides structure and order to the planning of future projects, but does not commit the university to specific individual projects, nor commit the university to carrying out development at any specific location or at any given timeline. I want to emphasize that an LRDP does not determine a UC campus's enrollment or overall population. An LRDP projects a future population solely for the purpose of evaluating what facilities a UC campus may need in the future. And the LRDP and the LRDP EIR update are used to entitle future development and infrastructure projects. The LRDP planning area includes all university-owned property within the city of Berkeley, as well as a portion of the Hill campus to the east here, which is located in the city of Oakland, actually here, and this section is in Contra Costa County. You can see the inset to this graphic that shows the satellite property within Berkeley to the west, the 1608 4th Street. As in past LRDPs, the LRDP update excludes University Village, Albany, and Richmond Field Station. It also excludes remote field stations and other university-owned properties lying entirely outside the city of Berkeley. The LRDP organizes the campus into 5 land use zones, which are shown here. We refer to the main campus as the campus park. This is the solid blue hatched lines you see. It's roughly 180 acres and defined by Hearst Ave to the north, Gailey Piedmont Ave to the east, Bancroft Way to the south and Oxford Street to the west. The campus park is the heart of UC Berkeley intellectual and student life and home to the majority of the university's academic and research programs and student life facilities. The Hill Campus West Zone is immediately to the east. It's this light blue dashed area here. It is about 50 acres and extends east of the campus park from Gailey Road to Piedmont Avenue and includes student housing along with sports and recreational facilities, including Maxwell Family Field, California Memorial Stadium, and the Strawberry Canyon Recreation Area, as well as the Greek Theater. The 750-acre Hill Campus East, which is the largest area, it's this greenish area, extends east from the eastern boundary of the Hill Campus West to the eastern boundary of the university's property at Grizzly Peak Boulevard, which is this boundary far east of the campus. The Hill Campus East comprises mostly natural open space, but includes several important facilities, including the Botanical Garden, Lawrence Hall of Science, Space Science Laboratory, and Mathematical Sciences Research Institute. The fourth zone is Clark Kerr Campus, which is this orange dotted area here. This is located about half a mile southeast of the campus park. It is 45 acres and is bounded by Warren Street to the west, White Way to the north, Derby Street to the south, and Claremont Canyon Regional Preserve to the east. It comprises student and faculty housing, a conference center, childcare facilities, and indoor-outdoor intercollegiate athletic and recreational facilities. And then finally, other university-owned properties which are located, which we're calling the city environs properties outside of the campus park. And these are solid red hatched areas. They comprise 70 acres, and they're mostly concentrated, as you can see, in the city of Berkeley South Side neighborhood and downtown area. The majority of UC's student housing is located in the South Side. University properties in this area also include administrative, student support, and athletics and recreational facilities, as well as parking structures, and the site known as People's Park, which is this number 2. In addition, there's this area, it's a 9.2 acre site known as the Smythe Fernwale property, adjacent to Clark Kerr. And because there could be the potential for growth of the campus park and the adjacent university property, Hill Campus, Clark Kerr Campus, and satellite properties within the city of Berkeley, the EIR study area is contiguous with the LRDP planning area. For the purposes of identifying the development needed to accommodate projected campus population, the horizon year is the 2036-37 academic year. That was established for UC Berkeley's LRDP update EIR. I will just give you the highlights here, which actually are right in front of you, but the population projections for the 2036-37 academic year are approximately 48,200 students, 19,000 faculty and staff. And then by the horizon year, that 2036-37, the LRDP update analyzed the following: 11,073 new student housing beds, 125 new supportive housing beds, 549 new faculty and staff housing units, and just under 3.2 million gross square feet of academic and campus life facilities. This is a total for 8 million gross square feet of net new space for academic life, campus life, residential, and parking. The population projections included in the LRDP update EIR provide a foundation for understanding the campus's long-term space needs. The assumptions represent the estimation of reasonably foreseeable development that could occur and are used as a basis for the EIR's environmental assessment. This slide shows the population projections for the LRDP update and EIR. As you can see from the table, the 2021 LRDP considers more growth than the previous LRDP in order to responsibly plan for growth that may be required by the state legislature over time. The LRDP uses the 2019 campus population as the baseline year associated with the draft LRDP update EIR. As you can see by the 2018-2019 academic year, UC Berkeley's enrollment exceeded our current LRDP's projections. Just quickly reading down these columns, you can see the population group. And then the second column is the 2020 LRDP population projections. Those were projected in 2005 with the last LRDP. This third column shows the current population at the baseline year of 2018-2019. We're moving into the future and looking at anticipated growth. So you can see anticipated growth for each of the students, undergraduate, graduates, and faculty. And then this second to last column to the right shows the projections of 2036-37 school year, reading down for those population groups. And just to summarize, the net change in students from 2018-2019 to what is projected in 2036-37 is an increase of 8,492 students, and employees over that same period is 3,579 students. So that's a increase of additional 12,071 students, and you can see the second to last column of 67,200 is the projected population on campus in 2036-37. I just want to note that the LRDP population projections are not a mandate for growth. The UC Regents and the state legislature ultimately determine undergraduate enrollment, and the campus has a responsibility to proactively plan for facilities in the long term to support our educational mission and campus population. The LRDP update EIR analyzed the development program based on conservative estimate of the space needed to support the campus's projected population. So you can see in this table that the LRDP update analyzed a net new need of approximately 3.2 million gross square feet of space, which includes academic, research, campus life, and support uses, 11,073 student beds, 549 faculty and staff beds, and 125 units of supportive housing, and additional 1,240 parking spaces. And these numbers are compared to the 2018-2019 baseline year. The LRDP update EIR also analyzes two housing projects. We're calling them housing project number 1 and number 2. Housing project number 1 is shown here. It's about a 0.92 acre site just west of the campus park. It's referred to as the Anchor House. The site is located across Oxford Street from the UC Berkeley campus park and is bounded by Oxford Street, University Avenue, Walnut Street, and Berkeley Way to the north. It's located in a priority development area and a transit priority area within close proximity to shuttle and AC transit, bike share, as well as the downtown Berkeley BART station. You can see to the right of this screen that the project proposes up to 770 student beds focused on transfer students and includes office space and active ground uses, which may include neighborhood retail space. The project would redevelop an underutilized university property as much needed student housing. Housing project number 2 is known as, on the site known as People's Park. This is a 2.8-acre site located on the southwestern corner of the intersection of Bowditch Street and Hay Street, roughly 0.2 of a mile south of the campus park. It's also located in a priority development area and a transit priority area within close proximity to shuttle, AC transit, bike share, and BART station as well. The project proposes to redevelop the site to provide much needed high density student housing to help meet the student housing needs of UC Berkeley, as well as provide supportive housing to the greater Berkeley and Bay Area community. It includes generous open space. So the site again is about 2.8 acres, and approximately 1 acre of the site would be developed, with the balance remaining as open landscape space. University housing would be geared towards lower division undergraduates with up to 1,187 beds. The proposal also includes a separate building of permanent supportive housing with up to 125 units to house lower income or the formerly homeless. As described at the outset, the presentation has 3 parts, and this is the second part to provide an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act and of the CEQA process. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to collect comments on the content of the draft LRDP and LRDP update EIR. The university looks forward to receiving comments on the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project. CEQA is the state's environmental protection and disclosure law. It was enacted in 1970 and requires public agencies to evaluate potential environmental effects of a project. In brief, the purpose of CEQA is to consider and disclose to the public and decision makers the environmental implications of their actions, increase public understanding of and participation in the environmental process. And 2, its purpose is to identify ways to avoid or reduce the potential significant environmental effects of those actions to the extent feasible through imposition of mitigation measures or alternatives. CEQA requires mitigation to avoid, minimize, rectify, reduce, eliminate, or compensate for any impacts determined to be significant. CEQA allows the incorporation of mitigation as goals, policies, and actions to reduce and or avoid impacts to the environment as a result of future development, thus resulting in what is known as a self-mitigating project or long-range development plan. UC Berkeley is the lead agency responsible for preparing the environmental review for the project. Under CEQA, the lead agency is a public agency that has the primary responsibility for carrying out or approving the project. The university is both the project proponent and the lead agency. The EIR must be certified before approval. The UC Regents would consider certification of the EIR and approve the LRDP update, which is anticipated this summer. An EIR is one of CEQA's mechanisms for identifying and disclosing potentially significant physical effects of a project. An EIR is an informational document that considers the environmental effects of a project. An EIR discloses information about the effects of a proposed project could have on the environment. As I said earlier, it identifies mitigation measures. It describes feasible alternatives to the proposed project and must be certified prior to project approval. CEQA includes different types of EIRs for varying situations and intended uses. Program level EIRs are appropriate for broad planning actions such as a long-range development plan and can be used to tier CEQA review of future development projects. Project level EIRs are appropriate for specific development projects. Because of the proposed project includes both a long-range plan, the LRDP, and the construction and operation of 2 specific housing projects 1 and 2. This LRDP update is considered a program EIR that includes both program level analysis for the proposed long-term policy document and project level analysis for the construction and operational phases of the two housing projects. The LRDP update program EIR analyzes a series of actions characterized as one large project that may be implemented by the university over the next 15 plus years. Among various advantages of preparing a program EIR is that it's helpful in dealing with subsequent activities. The goal is to prepare an EIR that analyzes the outer limits of any associated environmental impacts from physical planning so that many subsequent activities could be found to be within the scope of the project described in the program EIR. And this would allow subsequent future environmental documentation that is consistent with the LRDP update EIR to be streamlined, which is basically would allow for a simplified preparation and process. This slide shows the process and timeline. I'll just quickly describe the steps that have taken so far. University published a notice of preparation of an EIR on April 7th of last year. The university held an environmental scoping meeting April 27th of last year. We are currently in the middle of the 45-day draft EIR public review period, shown here. Comments can be received through April 21st, either by mail or electronically, as I will describe at the end of this presentation. The university anticipates completing the final LRDP update EIR with responses to public comments this summer, and also anticipates consideration of the EIR, of the LRDP and the LRDP update EIR by the regents this summer as well. I won't read this slide, but this is the draft LRDP update EIR includes an evaluation of all the applicable topics identified in Appendix G of the Sequa guidelines shown on the slide. So you can see kind of the breadth of the environmental topics, issues that are included in a EIR analysis. This slide shows the topics that were addressed and shown to have no impact on the environment, as discussed in the notice of preparation and notice of availability, and further described in Chapter 7 of the LRDP, of the draft LRDP update EIR. These proposed project components would not result in significant impacts to these areas due to proximity and other qualifying features, and are therefore not evaluated in the draft EIR. No impact describes the circumstances where a project would have no adverse impact on the environment. And for the LRDP update, these include scenic highways, loss of agricultural, forestry, and mineral resources, conflicts with the habitat conservation plan, soil adequacy for septic tanks and other alternative waste systems, and conflicts with airport land use plans, which affect both hazards and noise. This slide shows less than significant impact topic issues. These less than significant essentially means effects that are noticeable, but do not exceed established or defined thresholds, or are mitigated below such thresholds. The topics shown here were analyzed in the draft LRDP update EIR and were found to have less than significant impact. The project components shown here would result in less than significant impacts with the implementation of continuing best practices and feasible mitigation measures to reduce potential impacts to a less than significant level. Continuing best practices are what the university includes as regulations, applicable codes, best management practices, this university's campus design standard. These are what the university implements for all its capital projects, while mitigation measures are actions or features that are incorporated into a project in order to avoid or substantially reduce a project's significant impact on the environment. The project components on this slide include impacts that the draft LRDP update EIR has identified as being significant, even with the implementation of applicable continuing best practices and feasible mitigation measures to reduce, eliminate, or avoid the adverse effect. These impacts are conservative program level findings because the project-specific details of potential future development are unknown, or because they are temporary construction impacts, such as noise, for which mitigation is not feasible. These conclusions do not preclude the finding of less than significant at the project level when specific details of a project and the surrounding sensitive receptors, if any, are known. And that goes back to the idea of streamlining or tiering future projects, that we will do a project-specific analysis to analyze this project impacts. Statement of overriding considerations. This CEQA requires that decision-making agencies to balance, as applicable, the economic, legal, social, technological, or other benefits, including region-wide or statewide environmental benefits of a proposed project against its unavoidable environmental risks when determining whether to approve a project. If the specific economic, legal, social, technological, or other benefits, including region-wide or statewide environmental benefits of a proposed project outweigh the unavoidable adverse environmental impacts, the adverse environmental impacts may be considered acceptable. In these instances, the lead agency could approve a project which could result in the occurrence of significant effects which are identified in the final EIR, but are not avoided or substantially lessened, and adopt what is known as the Statement of Overriding Considerations. The Statement of Overriding Considerations must be supported by substantial evidence in the record. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, an EIR must describe feasible alternatives to the proposed project. As part of selecting a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed project, including the CEQA required no project alternative, UC Berkeley considered but rejected several alternatives as infeasible options. There are four that are shown here. There was a reduced graduate program, which was rejected because it conflicts with the project objective of maintaining, supporting, and enhancing UC Berkeley's status as an internationally renowned public research intensive institution and center for scientific and academic advancement. The historic resource buildings avoidance was not considered because it's infeasible to accommodate the LRDP update development program without potentially affecting historic resources, either directly through renovation or redevelopment of historic resource properties, or through development on vacant sites where the potential to affect a historic district exists. This includes housing projects 1 and 2. The alternate for housing projects 1 and 2, there was no available similar sites of size or location. And again, alternates to these two sites would likely have historic resources on them. And finally, there was an increased transportation demand management program alternative that was rejected. Transportation demand management, also known as TDM, aimed to reduce vehicle miles traveled, which is VMT. TDM is transportation demand, and VMT is vehicle miles traveled. And to reduce the VMT generated by new projects by shifting more typical car-dependent travel to other modes like transit or bicycle. UC Berkeley determined that the additional costs of new broader measures would be high relative to the additional benefit gained when compared to the ongoing costs and benefits of implementing the current TDM program. Additionally, UC Berkeley, in partnership with the City of Berkeley, can provide multimodal connections between the city and UC Berkeley at a more reasonable cost through shared funding with the city. This slide shows the alternatives that were evaluated. There were 4 of them, alternative A through D. To reduce the potentially significant impacts previously described, UC Berkeley considered in the draft LRDP update EIR a reasonable range of 4 alternatives to the proposed project, including the CEQA required no project alternative. A is a no project, B is a reduced development program, and you can see the details. Alternative C is a reduced vehicle miles traveled alternative, and D is increased faculty and staff housing. The alternatives focus on reducing on a reduced development program and increases in faculty and staff housing. All alternatives would assume the same amount of population growth. The alternatives analysis assumes that all applicable mitigation measures recommended for the proposed project would also apply to any potentially significant environmental impacts of each alternative, except for the no project alternative. The population is the same for all alternatives. While the proposed LRDP update is intended to accommodate changes in UC Berkeley population, UC Berkeley does not control UC Berkeley population through implementation with LRDP, but rather the undergraduate student population is mandated by the state. Therefore, UC Berkeley population estimates would remain the same as under the proposed project, but for A and B, there would be less accommodations in the capital development, including student housing and related development provided through the proposed LRDP update. The CEQA requires the lead agency to identify an environmentally superior alternative. CEQA guidelines require that an environmentally superior alternative be selected and the reasons for such a selection be disclosed. In general, the environmental superior alternative is the alternative to the proposed project that would be expected to generate the least number of significant environmental impacts. Identification of the environmentally superior alternative is an informational procedure, and the alternative to the proposed project selected may not be the alternative to the proposed project that best meets the goals or needs of UC Berkeley. The proposed project under consideration cannot be identified as the environmentally superior alternative. The no project alternative, alternative A, was the environmentally superior alternative. So CEQA requires that selection of the next superior alternative, which is alternative C. Based on the greater number of reduced impacts compared to increased impacts between the alternatives, alternative A would be the environmental superior alternative. But we turn to the next alternative because we can't choose that, the no project alternative. And the next one is alternative C. Well, both alternative C and D would result in fewer impacts than alternative B overall, but alternative C would result in fewer impacts pertaining to energy, while alternative D result in greater impacts pertaining to energy. This is the third part of the presentation and focuses on how to review and submit comments in the draft LRDP update EIR. All comments received are an important part of either the planning and environmental review process, but only comments which focus on the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project will be responded to in the final EIR. Comments will be tracked, considered, and included in the final EIR. Comments that were submitted by 1 p.m. this afternoon will be read aloud following this presentation. How to review the draft LRDP and the draft LRDP update EIR. Electronically, you can go to there is a website for the LRDP, which you can see is lrdp.berkeley.edu. Hard copies are available, limited. We printed copies of the draft LRDP and the draft LRDP update EIR available at the Downtown Berkeley Library for outside pickup. During the public comment period, the Downtown Berkeley Library is located at 2090 Kittredge Street in downtown Berkeley, and you can go to this website at the berkeleypubliclibrary.org website for hours and instructions how to visit and take out the hard copy. hard copies. Public notices, this is, you can sign up if you're not already to receive emails of Sequa notices and key project updates. There's a link here, capitalstrategies.berkeley.edu, about us, subscribe to our email list, and public notices are posted at capitalstrategies.berkeley.edu under public notices. How to submit comments. There are several ways. You can send written responses to UC Berkeley, Physical Environmental Planning, Attention 2021 LRDP and Housing Projects number 1 and 2, Draft EIR, 308 and E Building, Berkeley, California 94720. You can email your written responses to planning@berkeley.edu with that subject line that you see. Again, comments must be received by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 to be considered. After tonight, we will continue to receive public comments in the environmental analysis presented in the draft LRDP update EIR. Again, comments are most helpful when they focus on the environmental impacts of the proposed project as presented in the draft LRDP update EIR. And that concludes the presentation, and I'll send it back to Kyle, who will provide details about the public comment, which is the fourth and final part of this evening's meeting.
Thanks, Raphael. The public comments that we will read aloud starting in a few moments were submitted according to the directions in the Notice of Availability issued on March 8, 2021. Those directions specified that members of the public should email comments to planning@berkeley.edu by 1:00 p.m. today, include their full name, and state that UC Berkeley has permission to read their comment aloud. The notice also specified that comments would be read up to the first 300 words. The full length of comments received will be published in the final environmental impact report. I want to highlight that all comments on the draft environmental impact report received in writing by email or US mail by the April 21, 2021 deadline will be responded to equally in the final environmental impact report as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. There is no additional weight given to comments we read aloud for this evening's public hearing. If you would like to submit comments, please remember the deadline to submit written comments is April 21, 2021 at 5:00 p.m. And at this time, we will read aloud the 18 public comments that have been submitted for this evening's online public hearing. Comment number 1 is from Wendy Williams-Miko. Yes, do it. Build sound new housing with smart landscaping and safe lighting. Erase People's Park. Comment number 2 is from Brian Wilson. I am a proud UC Berkeley graduate, as are my wife and son, and my daughter will be starting the MBA program in the fall. I am intimately familiar with the situation at People's Park from my time in Berkeley, and my son lived a block away from People's Park for part of his time in Berkeley. I understand and respect the historical significance. On the other hand, it has become a rundown and dangerous place that is underutilized by most people in the community. The proposed plan thoughtfully takes into account the city's and university's past, present, and future needs. It is a far better proposal than any others I've seen in the 40 years that I've been following these issues. Opposition to the plan will be vocal and aggressive, but they are in the extreme minority and they are not considering the broader public good. They make legitimate points, but these are taken into account in the plan as effectively as possible. I strongly support the university's plan. Comment number 3 is from Aiden Hill. I am a current UC Berkeley student, a Southside resident living 1 block from People's Park, and a former vice chair of the city's Homeless Commission. The distinct mission of the university is to serve society as a center of higher learning, providing the long-term benefits of advanced knowledge and research through acts of public service in accordance with its educational purposes. Taking no action on Housing Project 2 represents the optimal long-term use of land and capital for the UC Berkeley campus as a whole. The UC Berkeley Physical Design Framework notes that open spaces provide an important resource for relaxation, recreation, and interaction with the environment. People's Park is an existing open space with intelligent synergy as a historical neighborhood resource built by community-driven people. The park holds significant cultural relevance with unrestricted access to its historic free speech stage, community gardens, and public art installations. It has relatively flat topography, incorporating grassy open areas with no fencing, barriers, or other features that would control pedestrian movement into and through the park. Approval of Housing Project 2 will physically divide an established community and cause permanent adverse environmental impacts by removing basketball courts, community gardens, access to a permanent public restroom, and a significant number of trees. Construction will significantly accelerate adverse health and environmental effects by contaminating groundwater and increasing air pollutant emissions, leading to respiratory diseases, asthma attacks, high blood pressure, and premature death. By taking no action on Housing Project 2, UC Berkeley will acknowledge the increasing effects of climate change on the environment. It will also maximize existing land and financial resources towards a diverse and accessible extracurricular, instructional, and research space in Berkeley's Southside neighborhood.
Comment number 4 is from Alfred Twu. Please consider avoiding demolition of the 1921 Walnut Street building while maintaining the same or greater number of dorm beds by making Housing Project number 1 taller. Comment number 5 is from Bert Weinstein. My 2 cents for what it's worth. There is no historical or cultural sanctity about the People's Park. It is property of Cal and should be used for university purposes, not dictated by other constituents of Berkeley. It certainly should not have housing for homeless people. That would present health and safety concerns for students and present significant legal liabilities to the university. Comment number 6 is from Jordan Klein. On behalf of the City of Berkeley, I am writing to request additional time for public comment on the UC Berkeley Long Range Development Plan and Housing Projects number 1 and 2, Draft Environmental Impact Report. This document was posted online March 8th, and public comments are currently due on April 21st, 2021. The California Environmental Quality Act requires a thorough assessment of the environmental impacts of the project, which in this instance is actually 3 projects: the LRDP update, Housing Project number 1, and Housing Project number 2. City of Berkeley staff and residents are carefully reviewing the project and plan to comment on the potential environmental impacts. However, given the voluminous 957-page document, additional time is required to enable adequate public comment on the DEIR. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic had long-term effects on the community that are making it more difficult for Berkeley staff and residents to complete its review of the DEIR within the allotted public comment period. State mandates restrict gatherings for face-to-face discussions with project neighbors and with other local concerned citizens, and the ongoing public health emergency complicates efforts to consult with experts better equipped to evaluate the project's many technical aspects. Informed decision-making and informed public participation are fundamental purposes of the Sequa process. The public must have a meaningful opportunity to comment on a draft EIR. Here, in light of the aforementioned community challenges, the review period should be extended to allow adequate time for informed public participation. We therefore request that the University of California extend the deadline for public comment period from April 21st, 2021 to May 21st, 2021. We request your response to this extension request as soon as reasonably feasible. Thank you for your consideration.
Comment number 7 is from Anonymous. People's Park is currently a homeless encampment a health hazard, and a source of crime, which is a danger to the students and other residents. I support any efforts to clean up the park and to build badly needed student housing. I do question mixing homeless housing with student housing. If that aspect is to continue, the homeless who live there should be vetted so that they do not pose a danger to the students. Comment number 8 from Charles Siegel. Though UC's long-range development plan will generate a huge amount of traffic, that traffic is not a significant impact as defined by SB 743. Yet it is clear to those of us who have looked at past EIRs that this added traffic would cause gridlock at peak hours at a number of intersections in downtown Berkeley. Transportation demand management, TDM, could mitigate this problem. The most effective would be commute allowances. Charge more for parking, give commuters an extra cash allowance to pay for the higher parking cost, and let them keep the cash if they do not drive, to give them a financial incentive to carpool or shift to other modes. Yet UC is planning to keep its current TDM measures, but not to add any new ones. Though it is not required by law, UC could mitigate congestion if it chose to. Environmental law has also changed so developers do not have to consider the impact of parking, but UC will provide enough parking for all the projected new commuters. Yet they apparently are oblivious to the fact that commuters will have a miserable time crawling through gridlocked traffic and will miss appointments and classes because of unpredictable travel times. Even if UC does not care about their plans' impact on the state's efforts to control global warming, even if you do not care about its impact on the safety of Berkeley pedestrians and bicyclists, including your own students, even if you care only about the automobile computers you are diligently providing parking for, you should have enough sense to realize that those automobile computers will be miserable unless you do something to reduce congestion. You are not required by law to reduce traffic, but you must reduce traffic if you want the transportation system to work. Comment 9 from Lisa Teague. Quote, in 1969, Frank Bardacke, a co-founder and defender of People's Park, wrote this call for defending the park. It is important that it be heard again nearly 52 years later, because the university is still trying to develop this precious and historic green space. Quote, someday a petty official will appear with a piece of paper called a land title, which states that the University of California owns the land of People's Park. Where did that piece of paper come from? What is it worth? A long time ago, the Costanoan Indians lived in the area now called Berkeley. They had no concept of land ownership. They believed that the land was under the care and guardianship of the people who used it and lived on it. Catholic missionaries took the land away from the Indians. No agreements were made, no papers were signed. They ripped it off in the name of God. The Mexican government took the land away from the church. The Mexican government had guns and an army. God's word was not as strong. The Mexican government wanted to pretend that it was not the army that guaranteed them the land. They drew up some papers which said they legally owned it. No Indians signed those papers. The Americans were not fooled by the papers. They had a stronger army than the Mexicans. They beat them in a war and took the land. Then they wrote some papers of their own and forced the Mexicans to sign them. The American government sold the land to some white settlers. The government gave the settlers a piece of paper called a land title in exchange for some money. All this time, there were still some Indians around who claimed the land. The American army killed most of them.
Comment number 10 comes from Natalie Lagouche. I am a tenant at 1921 Walnut Street, a 112-year-old rent-controlled apartment building housing several long-term tenants. The current plans for Housing Project 1 include evicting the existing tenants and demolishing 1921 Walnut Street. The draft EIR omits vital information about the impact of this plan for the following reasons. 1, the LRDP draft EIR ignores community input. The Berkeley community, including Berkeley Mayor Erwin, Berkeley City Council, Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board, ASUC, countless community members, denounced any plans to evict tenants at 1921 Walnut Street and demolish the building. The draft EIR does not account for the perspective of people actually living in the community. 2, Housing Project 1 will have devastating effects on the individual tenants living at 1921 Walnut Street, as well as persons in general in the Berkeley/the Bay Area, because affordable units will be permanently removed from housing stock during a statewide housing crisis, All new housing proposed by Housing Project 1 is student only, thereby decreasing housing stock for non-student populations. These impacts directly conflict with California statewide and Berkeley City local initiatives and laws that preserve and protect existing affordable housing stock. UC should not be evicting long-term / rent-controlled tenants and permanently destroying affordable housing stock. 4, the original plan for the Gateway site did not include the parcel of land at 1921 Walnut Street, thus proving there is no need to evict tenants or demolish 1921 Walnut Street in order to build student housing on the remainder of the block. In addition, UC has several other sites throughout Berkeley where student housing can be built without displacing long-term and rent-controlled tenants. I urge you to halt all plans to evict the tenants at 1921 Walnut Street and to rewrite any plans that include demolishing 1921 Walnut Street. Comment number 11 is from Isis Farrell. These projects are opposed by local residents already with legal challenges on behalf of People's Park Council and Hills Conservation Network. The latter is challenging another DEIR specific to Hill Campus, which UC is targeting in multiple EIRs. UC refuses to let environmental laws get in the way of killing every tree in its path of expansion. Hill Campus was among several agencies' projects reviewed by FEMA's East Bay Hills EIS, which together would have destroyed 500,000 trees on thousands of acres on University, Park District, and Oakland land. UC attempted to appropriate public emergency funds for the same development scheme proposed here, but was stopped in court, and was the addendum to the previous LRDP EIR with which UC tried to sneak the project past Sequa, but not before UC illegally clear-cut Browning Ridge before the completion of the FEMA EIS. I especially oppose making this EIR programmatic, a maneuver to avoid CEQA compliance and public involvement on unspecified future projects, which would further encroachment of UC facilities on unwilling communities. Future projects must produce their own EIR and include public input. I oppose increasing university population, which violates City of Berkeley agreements. It burdens local infrastructure, displaces long-term residents, with even UC students homeless, neglected by an overpriced, overcrowded public university. This proposal is not an effort to find solutions for existing housing problems, but to expand and bring in more students, further compounding the problem. Attempts to develop People's Park would certainly be met with resistance like all previous attempts over the past 5 decades. Those killed and injured depending our public commons are not properly honored by symbolic memorials, but require People's Park once and for all be declared a protected historical landmark that belongs to the community, not the university. Comment 12 comes from Ivar Deal. The UC system and UC Berkeley must prioritize student safety. The neglect of earthquake-proofing existing historic buildings, which has persisted for decades, has resulted in a backlog in excess of 70 dangerous structures. The campus sits directly on the Hayward Fault, which is considered overdue for a large quake, according to UC Berkeley's own seismologists and the general consensus in the field. If UC and Capital Strategies continues this criminal divestment in student, faculty, and staff safety, it is no exaggeration to say that blood will be on the hands of those making these unwise budget decisions. Before UC is allowed to build new stuff, they must be held to account and make serious inroads into retrofitting the top most dangerous structures before lives are lost. The Hayward Fault could strike at any moment. Due to the violation of the previous UC LRDP, the student enrollment has exceeded the agreement by at least 10,000. To provide real relief of this housing crisis, much more housing than what is buildable on the 2.8 acres of People's Park, Building Proposal 1, is required. Due to historic due to historical status of People's Park as a city landmark, the site is inappropriate for this structure, which will also shade and dwarf 3 architectural treasures. The place to develop is at Clark Kerr campus, which is a 100+ acre site and is very near the main campus. Gill Tract and Oxford Tract were donated for the express purpose of agricultural study, increasingly important in view of climate change. Oxford Tract is a vitally important site as a conduit for residents entering horticultural professions in the area, maintaining human and ecological integrity. Do the sensible thing, build at Clark Kerr.
Comment number 13 is from Maxina Ventura. East Bay Pesticide Alert submitted extensive, detailed comments in the past as part of this public process. We invoke those detailed comments again and note that in past parts of this process, the public's actual comments were withheld, only briefly summarized by representatives of UC so that those trying to access full notes were denied unless they knew how to contact individuals or groups which submitted comments. We note UC creating addenda such as with the Levine-Fricke softball field part of the EIR process, seeming to try to hide the fact that they plan to down mature redwoods in order to make luxury viewing boxes. UC has also ravaged the mature eucalyptus near there, releasing sequestered carbon, xenophobia leading to climate change. UC deception has been in every part of the LRDP process and the Hill Campus and People's Park plans, but we won't have it. You suppressed the truth enough and it has to come out, and UC's deceptive practices in deforesting and pesticiding are being understood by more and more, as is the fact that the plans for People's Park never have been about housing, ever. This EIR reveals that UC not only plans to decimate most trees directly in People's Park, but uses its tricky legal language meant to assuage concerns by saying it will try to save trees by replanting, even a massive redwood, which will lead to many or most dying. But all UC cares about is looking like it cares. That's UC/Capital Strategies Smoke and Mirrors. Just a week ago, a Berkeley Rent Board member said there is no lack of vacant housing in Berkeley, but a lack of honestly affordable housing, and UC is to blame as it charges above market rate for inferior housing. UC says, so sue us, wasting more student and taxpayer money. Comment number 14 is from Laurel Halverson. The LRDP does not adequately assess the impacts on population and housing for housing project number 1 due to the decrease of overall affordable housing stock within the city of Berkeley and the stark ignorance of input of people living in the local community. The draft LRDP and EIR does not adequately assess the impacts on population and housing due to the insufficient collaboration with local communities and unhoused people who would be displaced due to project number 2. The local cultural impact of housing project number 2 is inadequately assessed under the LRDP and EIR. At all public comment or open house opportunities for community engagement, there was no alternative presented for no development. Alternative A under the LRDP draft should have been presented to the public before moving forward for project approvals. You should be ashamed of yourselves for prioritizing these 2 properties of development. Unaffordable and violent developments do nothing to solve a UC-created housing crisis. Comment number 15 is from Michelle Yu. I, as a current UC Berkeley student living on South Side near People's Park, condemn the building of housing project number 2 on People's Park. For more than 50 years, People's Park has been a lively communal space where Berkeley residents and students come together to build community relationships, get needed resources, and work on environmental preservation through events such as weekly gardening parties, concerts, People's Park committee meetings, movie nights, cookouts, and more. The uprooting of this communal space would devastate the many residents who call the park home, destroy one of the last remaining green spaces in Berkeley, erase decades of rich cultural, political, and social history, and cause permanent environmental consequences. Moreover, the university is not transparent regarding its construction plans. The proposed affordable and supportive housing in housing project number 2 that will be overseen by RCD cannot ensure that People's Park residents will be provided housing once displaced during construction. Firstly, RCD may not even have the funds to build supportive and affordable housing units, as there is no current grant secured for the project. Most likely, the unhoused community will be unable to access the units due to insufficient income to pay rent and likely ineligibility for the units, as it is still unclear who RCD will provide housing for. Finally, by transferring all accountability of the supportive housing to RCD means the university is not taking any responsibility for ensuring the safety of those displaced from People's Park. If the university truly cares about those that will be displaced, the university should use its monetary funds to ensure first that RCD can build the supportive housing, and second, that the housing will be built for those displaced from the park.
Comment 16 from Moni Law. I am a Cal alum urging you to reject the proposal to demolish and reconfigure People's Park. I'm a lifetime member of the Cal Alumni Association, former ASUC senator, and member of the Order of the Golden Bear, Berkeley Breakfast Club, NAACP Berkeley chapter, and chapter of the Berkeley Community Safety Coalition. I've read the 100-page report and some of the remaining 874 pages of attached charts and studies. Clearly, there are alternatives to demolishing an irreplaceable historic resource. The UC has other identified opportunity sites to build upon without the significant adverse impacts present in this case. To demolish a historic treasure that also provides urgently needed green space would be an unconscionable act, a disservice to the university, the city, and the world. The list of mitigation proposals is inadequate. The conclusion that some construction activities would have no impact is questionable. I've attended many community events in the park with a diverse group of people in attendance. I helped to build the stage that is there. I know people who have maintained the garden over the years. Please read the report of Harvey Smith and other historians and land preservationists. This is not the location to build student housing. Other sites can and should be selected and include enough units that are affordable to students receiving Pell Grants or grad students struggling on GSI stipends. I support my alma mater providing housing to students, many whom I mentor and advise. People's Park elimination is not the solution to our housing crisis. Please build on the other 7 or 8 sites owned by and identified by the university as suitable for student staff housing. The only green space left in the area, an historic landmark that has worldwide significance, is not the place to pave over. Comment 17, Stephanie Thomas. Please do not destroy this sacred Berkeley space. Let us be creative and work with what is there. There are other places for housing at UC lands in Berkeley. UC is taking over our town. And the final comment, 18, from Jenna Fuden. I am speaking as a Berkeley resident who does not want university housing development to go on People's Park. The park serves as the green lungs, the largest green space to an otherwise concrete full area of the south side of campus. If you are in support of environmental justice, which my understanding is that UC Berkeley is, then there is absolutely no reason to even consider developing on such important green space to not just humans, but to overall ecosystem health as well. Developing on People's Park will not secure housing for students and vulnerable populations. It is an act of gentrification that is harmful to the well-being of our urban lands and community.
That final comment will conclude this evening's online public hearing for the draft environmental impact report for the UC Berkeley 2021 Long-Range Development Plan and Housing Projects 1 and 2. A recording of this public hearing will be posted on the Long Range Development Plan website and on the Capital Strategies YouTube channel. Please remember that the deadline to submit comments is April 21, 2021 at 5:00 p.m., and that all comments received before that deadline will be responded to as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. In closing, thank you for joining us this evening, and we hope that you stay safe and have a good evening.